Hello friends, we are back yet again to talk about these two watches, the Garmin Fenix E and the brand new Amazfit T-Rex 3. Also, don't mind my dog back there, he's just doing his thing. A couple of days ago, I posted a video on this YouTube channel that was an in-depth review of the new Amazfit T-Rex 3. And I titled that video something dramatic like Garmin Fenix E Killer or something like that. Sorry about that. And in that in-depth review of the T-Rex 3, I gave this product kind of a glowing review because it's affordable, it has a ton of features, and on paper, it matches up pretty favorably to the Garmin Fenix E, which is very expensive. Even though that's all true, I felt obligated to make this follow-up video because that T-Rex 3 video was not supposed to be like a side-by-side comparison against the Fenix E, because in reality, let's be honest here, the $279 T-Rex 3 is not a replacement for the Fenix E. Because realistically, the Amazfit T-Rex 3 still lacks a lot of features that the Garmin Fenix E has. However, for the right person, the T-Rex 3 might be a better fit, and for that person, it might be a Fenix E killer. In this video today, we're just gonna do a side-by-side comparison of like 16 different categories that I chose that I feel like are the most important to talk about between these two watches to try to help you make a purchasing decision. And a quick note, I'm gonna be keeping this pretty high level and focused in on these key categories that I think are the most important comparing these two watches. If you wanna learn all about these watches individually, go check out my other videos where I have in-depth reviews of both of them. All right, first topic, this is a big one, price and options. Obviously, I just mentioned it, the Amazfit T-Rex 3 represents a value. This watch comes in at $279 here in the USA. You can buy it over on Amazon, linked down below, by the way. And for me, I saw like overnight shipping for free, which is pretty cool. Now, even though the Amazfit T-Rex 3 is more affordable and comes in at $279, there is one downside to the options side of things in that there is only one size available and one color available. Now let's talk about the Garmin Fenix E here because it's very different. The model I have here is the Fenix E 47mm AMOLED model, and that does have a sapphire lens and a titanium bezel. The model I have here, I believe, is $1,099, so clearly way more expensive than the Amazfit T-Rex 3. The other benefit to the Garmin Fenix E is that you have options. If you do not like a big watch like these 48mm form factors, you can get the smaller version, which comes in at 43mm in diameter, and that's much more suitable for smaller wrists. Okay, I've already alluded to this a little bit, but let's talk about the build quality between the Fenix E and the T-Rex 3. Again, this is sort of an apples to oranges comparison. Even though the T-Rex 3 is a really nicely built watch, it does not directly compare to the build quality of the Fenix E here. First up is the glass on the front of the watch. Now, on my version of the Fenix E here, I do have a sapphire lens, and sapphire is a lab-created crystal that is incredibly scratch resistant. Sapphire is optional on the Fenix E. You do have to pay a little more for it, but at least it is available. Now, on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, this does have a Gorilla Glass lens, just like the lesser expensive Fenix E. Jumping to the bezels between the Fenix E and the T-Rex 3, on the Fenix E, you do get a titanium bezel, which is a higher, more premium material. On the T-Rex 3, you do have a stainless steel here. Still a good material, still very durable, but not as lightweight as the titanium on the Fenix E. Flipping the watches on their side here, this is kind of interesting. Both these watches do have sort of a sensor guard. Now let's talk about the buttons between the T-Rex 3 and the Fenix E. Another big difference here. So both these watches are waterproof and they are dive rated, though there are some significant differences there as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. However, the Garmin Fenix E employs a really fancy button design that they call leak-proof buttons. And what they do here is they actually use a wireless proximity sensor to detect when the button is pushed. And the benefit of that design is that there's no penetration to the inside cavity of the watch, which keeps this watch incredibly waterproof. Jumping back to the T-Rex 3 here, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they're not using that inductive proximity switch design for their buttons, because when I push on these buttons, I do feel a mechanical click, which does indicate that it is pushing on a button inside the watch, which is not a bad design, and it's been around for a long time. Even like the Garmin Forerunner 965 has the same design. It's just not as water resistant, as waterproof as the buttons on the Fenix E. And flipping the watches over, you'll see another difference here. The Garmin Fenix E has an entirely metal backplate. This covers the back of the watch. It's not totally necessary because how often do you expose the back of your watch to the elements? But it is nice. It does feel more premium on the wrist. In the middle here, they both have optical heart rate sensors, and if you look at my in-depth review of either of these watches, both perform pretty well. And let's flip the watches back over one more time and talk about the flashlights. So on the Garmin Fenix E, you get a real flashlight. This is a built-in flashlight in the case of the watch. It is LED, and it's actually pretty darn bright. Now this flashlight might sound a little bit gimmicky to you, and it did to me at first, but after having this on my watch, it's honestly hard to live without it. Jumping back to the T-Rex 3 here, there is no hardware built-in flashlight on this watch. However, it does have the on-screen flashlight that you can trigger by tapping this little icon. I will say it's pretty bright. In a dark situation, you can use it to find your car keys or whatever in the dark, but it really does not compare at all to the physical, real flashlight built into the Fenix 8. Another consideration between these two watches are the included bands and band options for that matter. So on the Garmin Fenix 8, they use a quick fit system. The quick fit system is really nice. It's this black mechanical thing in the back here. When I push on that with my thumb, I can pop the band off within a couple of seconds. It is very secure, and to put it back on, you get a nice satisfying click. These bands are widely available. You can buy them direct from Garmin, but they're pretty expensive, or you can buy third-party bands off of Amazon or any other website for like 10 bucks. Jumping over to the T-Rex 3 here, it does not have a quick release system by default. That by default part is important because in the box, they do include this little kit that allows you to remove the stock band with a little screwdriver that they include, and then you can install these little plastic adapters here. And once these little plastic adapters are in place, you can use any 22mm quick release band available on Amazon or any other website. Hey there, quick interruption. If you're finding this video useful or fun, I would really appreciate it if you drop down and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss more videos from me in the future, because it turns out like 80% of you aren't subscribed. So go do it. And while you're down there, check out the links in the description down below that do help support this channel, where you can go pick up your very own Fenix 8 or T-Rex 3. Okay, back to the video. Moving right along into the next topic, we're going to talk about the display, because this is pretty important. So the Garmin Fenix 8 has a great display. It is 1.4 inches in diameter, and it does have a really high resolution, along with a decent brightness of 1000 nits. The new Amazfit T-Rex 3 does have an advantage in this department because it gets a larger 1.5 inch display, and in practice, it is noticeable. And in particular for me, the thing that really makes it look good is the fact that it doesn't have a black border or bezel around it like the Fenix 8. The display takes up the entire opening of the watch, which makes the watch just look a little bit more modern. Another benefit to the Amazfit T-Rex 3's display is that it gets up to 2000 nits of brightness. 2000 nits of brightness is brighter than the Garmin Fenix 8, and when you are out in direct sunlight, for example, going on a hike or a trail run or just a run in general, and that sun is glaring on your watch, the Amazfit T-Rex 3 is a little bit easier to see thanks to that added brightness. Now let's talk about the user interface between these two watches. If you look at my Garmin Fenix 8 here and I scroll down, you see that the user interface is pretty smooth. What's interesting though is that the T-Rex 3 seems to render graphics just a little bit smoother. You can see if I scroll down through the tiles on my widgets here on the T-Rex 3, the animations and everything just to look a little bit more polished. They're not as clunky, which is kind of interesting for a much cheaper watch, but that's sort of always been the case with Amazfit watches. Even the cheaper ones than this have a really nice fluid user interface. The Garmin watch lays out things a little bit differently, where it sets up things in these widget glances here. These are fully customizable. You can add and remove them, and you can also download more from the Connect IQ store, which is sort of like their app store. But the nice thing about the widget glances is that you get all of your wellness information and all of your other data in one place. I've got my weather, my sunrise and sunset, and then I get all of my training data and my health data in these buckets or truncated folders here. Jumping over to the T-Rex 3 here, if I scroll down from the watch face here, you can see I drop into these tiles. And again, these are fully customizable, and they are kind of similar to the widget glances on the Garmin, although a bit different because they are a little bit more focused on like smartwatch features rather than all of your health and wellness data, though you can customize them to be that way. So as you can see, sort of a similar layout to the Garmin, but there is more to it on the Amazfit T-Rex 3. If I tap the top right button here, that brings us right into our activity menu to choose what activity you want to start. But if you tap the back button on the bottom here, it brings you into your app list or app menu. From here, you've got a whole bunch of stuff, from starting a workout to your workout history, your workout status, your readiness score. Speaking of smartwatch features though, let's talk about music, because that's where things are very different between these two watches. As you can see on the left side of the screen, I've got my Garmin with loaded up music. If I go in here on the T-Rex 3, I can also load up music here. But how they handle music is vastly different. Both these watches do have 32 gigabytes of internal storage for downloading offline music. However, on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, you are limited to MP3 files only. And I don't know about you, but here in 2024, MP3 files aren't all that common. It's not something a lot of people are using. I know a lot of you out there might have a library of MP3 files, but for me, I rely on like Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, that sort of thing. And that's where Garmin shines, because the Garmin Fenix 8 here does support Spotify, it does support Amazon Music, it does support Deezer, iHeartRadio, and there's a plethora of other music services available for the Fenix 8. And the final smartwatch feature I want to bring up here is payments, wireless payments or NFC payments. The Garmin Fenix 8 has Garmin Pay. As you can see there, I've got my wallet icon there, and all I got to do is press this button, and that'll allow me to pay for stuff with my watch, which is pretty useful. Jumping back to the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, it's a little bit confusing because I think this watch is actually NFC capable, and Zepp or Amazfit does have something called Zepp Pay for this very purpose. However, it is not supported here in the USA, so I don't see it on my watch. I don't know if you'll see it on your watch if you're in another country. Next up, let's talk speakers and microphones. Both of these watches do have built-in microphones for taking voice controls, which is pretty cool. Now, keep in mind, I just said that both have a microphone built in, but only one of them has a speaker built in, and that is the Garmin Fenix 8. On both of these watches, I've mapped the top right button or the start button to go directly into their voice command. So I'm gonna try to do a voice command at the same time here. What's the weather? So the Garmin took about 1 second. The Amazfit T-Rex 3 is reading out the weather on screen there, and now I can see the weather widget. But as you can see, both work. However, the Garmin Fenix 8 does have an advantage here as well. If we go into the command center here and then scroll around, you're gonna find that there's two options for voice controls. There's voice command, which is what I was just showing you, but there's also phone assistant, which will connect to your phone's smart assistant. In my case, it's an iPhone, so it would connect to Siri. This feature is also compatible with Google Assistant or Bixby or whatever other phone assistant you're using. Unfortunately, on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, that is not a feature available. You can only use Zepp Flow for your voice commands, which is built into the watch, and no third-party assistance. Jumping back to the Garmin Fenix 8 here, another big difference is that the Fenix 8 does have a speaker. That means on the Garmin Fenix 8, you can also receive and make phone calls with the watch itself, as long as you have your phone nearby, because it's not an LTE capable device. But it means if you've got your phone buried away in your backpack, you can answer a phone call on your watch. Both of these watches also have a voice note feature, which allows you to record something into the watch using the built-in microphone. This is a pretty handy feature, so if you have something you need to remember, you can quickly record it and play it back later. Next up, let's talk about the ecosystems. This is going to be a big one. This is kind of a can of worms, and I'm going to try to summarize as quick as possible. When I say ecosystems, I mean devices and accompanying devices. And again, there are pros and cons to both platforms here. So on the Garmin side of things, the Garmin Fenix 8 ties into Garmin Connect, and Garmin Connect is a huge platform. A lot of things connect to Garmin Connect. This includes bike computers, the Garmin satellite communicators, Garmin bike radars, you get heart rate sensors, and a whole bunch of other things that will connect directly to the app. The benefit of having that ecosystem is that if you're a multi-sport athlete, you're someone who rides a bike, but you also run, and you have a Garmin bike computer and you have a Garmin watch, it means when you go on a bike ride with your Garmin Edge bike computer, you can collect all of that training data. It'll go up to Garmin Connect and be reflected on your watch as well. And there's more to it than just that, because there's like Garmin dog collars and Garmin bow and arrow stuff and accessories, and it all ties into one ecosystem. Jumping back to the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, it's also got its own ecosystem. In fact, if you do have multiple Amazfit watches, you can pair them to the same app. But another added benefit to the Amazfit T-Rex 3 is that they also make this. This is the Amazfit Helio Smart Ring. That means if you don't like wearing a watch like the T-Rex 3 here to sleep or even during the day, you can wear this Amazfit Helio ring and still collect wellness data like your step count, your HRV, your sleep metrics, and your readiness score without wearing a watch. And again, I've got a full review of the Helio ring. If you're interested, go check it out on my channel. However, the downside to the Zepp or Amazfit ecosystem is that they're sort of limited on products. They do make the watches and they do make the Helio ring. I think they also make earbuds and smart scales and stuff like that, but they don't make bike computers, they don't make radars for your bike, they don't make heart rate sensors, like all of that other stuff that Garmin's known for, Amazfit doesn't do. Now let's talk about external sensors, because that sort of ties into the ecosystem part of things, where on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, it does support external sensors. You compare a Bluetooth chest strap to it or a power meter for a bike or something like that, and it will work on the Amazfit T-Rex 3. Now, there are some downsides here. On the T-Rex 3, it only supports Bluetooth sensors. It does not support ANT+ sensors like the Fenix 8. The Garmin has some other advantages there as well because it ties in to a whole bunch of other sensors and not just heart rate sensors and power meters. You can get things like foot pods and temperature sensors and all kinds of stuff that are compatible with the Garmin and are not compatible with the T-Rex 3. Another big difference between these two devices is their health and wellness data. As you can see here on the right, I have the T-Rex 3 with the readiness score open, and on the Garmin, I have my body battery. Both of these are trying to accomplish the same thing. The body battery here is basically turning your body into a virtual battery, where if you have 100% on your body battery, it means you're fully charged and you're ready to take on the day ahead. On the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, the readiness score is a similar thing. Even though they're pretty similar, there's a pretty big difference between the two. So on the Garmin here, you can see this graph, and this graph shows my real-time body battery throughout the day. And as the day moves on, you can see how my body battery trends down over time because I'm losing battery. So the more active you are, the more stressed out you are, the quicker you lose your battery throughout the day. But the cool thing about body battery is that it shows this graph showing your decline of body battery along with all of the factors that play a role in it, like your sleep and your stress, and that's what that orange stuff is there. That's all of my stress data. On the readiness score on the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, it's based on a bunch of factors as well. If I scroll down, you can see I've got physical recovery, mental recovery, sleep resting heart rate, sleep HRV, breathing quality, and wrist temperature, and then a graph of previous day and my readiness score. One thing you might notice about this graph though, which I think is kind of the downside of readiness, is that every day looks almost the same. And that's sort of a segue into accuracy with these metrics. Now, I don't have a great way to scientifically test how accurate body battery is compared to the readiness score. All I can tell you is what I feel when I wake up in the morning and how these metrics look. And for the most part, I feel like the Garmin is just a little bit more accurate. For whatever reason, on Amazfit devices, including the T-Rex 3 here, I've found that readiness is always a bit generous. I've never seen this score drop super low, like into the 60s or 50s or whatever, even on a bad night of sleep. Now, my Garmin here, if I have a bad night of sleep, some mornings I'll wake up and see that my body battery is like 25 after I slept for 7 hours. And the same thing goes here for sleep metrics. So as you can see here, the sleep metrics between the Amazfit T-Rex 3 and the Garmin Fenix 8 actually look pretty similar, where the T-Rex 3 recorded 7 hours and 12 minutes, and the Garmin Fenix 8 recorded 7 hours and 6 minutes, so close enough for me. The difference here, though, is the sleep score. You can see the sleep score on the Amazfit T-Rex 3 is 94, where on my Garmin Fenix 8, it's 81. And this goes back to what I'm saying about that generous score on the T-Rex 3. Pretty much every night, I'm getting a score of like 80 to 90, sometimes even 94, 95%. This example is pretty bad because I actually did sleep pretty well last night, and that's why I'm getting a pretty high score on both devices. Now let's talk about training tools on these two watches. And as you can see, I've got their 7-day training load loaded up on both watches. And again, they actually look pretty similar here, which is good to see. However, what I do like about the Fenix 8 and its training load is that it gives you this window where it shows an optimal zone for your training. Over on the T-Rex 3 here, you don't get that little highlighted area, although you do get this sort of gauge that goes around the perimeter of the watch, which does give you a visual indicator. Another benefit of the Garmin Fenix 8 with its training load is if I scroll down, I get more data about my training load, including my anaerobic, my high aerobic, and low aerobic states and what day of the week that happened, along with my load ratio that shows my acute load versus my chronic load. On the Garmin Fenix 8, we also have load focus, which breaks down all of my training load into different categories. And then of course, both watches will generate an estimated VO2 max that gives you an idea of your current fitness level. But as you can see, both of them are very different. On the Garmin, I'm getting a 54, and on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, I'm getting a 49. Again, I don't have a super accurate way to tell you which one's more accurate, but I can tell you I was lab tested about a year ago, and I was more in line with the Garmin than I was with the Amazfit devices at that time. All I'll say, I'll summarize here, I kind of trust the Garmin metrics a little bit more. I put more weight in them. Okay, now let's talk about activity profiles and customization on these watches. As you can see here, both have an absolute absurd amount of activities to choose from. They've got the basics like running, cycling, hiking, etc., but they also have super niche activities like team sports and pickleball, although that's really popular these days. However, there are big differences even in the activity profiles between these two watches. While on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, it has like 170 different activity profiles to choose from, but largely it's the same activity profile, just copied and pasted with a different name. And they do that to sort of organize your activities within the app. There are some differences though on the T-Rex 3, like when you do a strength training workout, you will get things like your set count, When you do an outdoor cycling activity, you'll get things like your speed and distance. And when you do a running activity, you do get things like running power, which is pretty cool. On the Garmin Fenix 8, however, it's a little bit different. And of course, there's a lot of other copied and pasted activities on the Fenix 8 as well, but not as many as the T-Rex 3. Another major difference when it comes to activity recording, though, is when it comes to golf. If I click on golf here, on the Garmin Fenix 8, you actually will get access to a full list of golf courses. As you can see here, it just identified nearby golf courses. And if I click on one of these, it'll actually load up the full golf course and let me know how far the holes are from me. That means this is like a full golf computer on your wrist, and it'll actually have graphics to help you along the way. Jumping back to the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, this also has a golf activity, but it's only designed to pick up your swing and not so much give you any information about the course you're on. Speaking of activity recording, let's talk about diving, like scuba diving and free diving, because I did make a mistake in my in-depth review of the T-Rex 3, because honestly, I'm not a diver, I'm just learning about it now. Now, even though both these watches are rated to dive up to 40 meters or 45 meters in the case of the T-Rex 3 here, they are vastly different when it comes to dive features. So on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, it'll give you information like your real-time depth, the water temperature, along with your speed of ascent or descent. But that's kind of it. That's kind of all the information you get from the T-Rex 3. Another feature that the Amazfit has is a no-fly timer, which is good as well. However, it's lacking all of those other dive functions like decompression alert and rise time or whatever it's called, and all of your gases and all that stuff I don't quite understand. And that's where the Garmin Fenix 8 comes in. The Garmin Fenix 8 does have all that additional stuff, and that makes it an actual dive computer and capable of scuba diving. Now, the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, from what I understand, it's really only designed for free diving. Moving into the next topic, let's talk mapping and navigation, where again, there are some major differences between these two watches. The Amazfit T-Rex 3 does have mapping and navigation capabilities, and to be honest, they're actually pretty good. If you haven't seen it, go watch my in-depth review where I talk all about this. So it does have full color base maps with contour lines and lit map labels and a ton of information on the maps. However, the maps are not routable and there is no point of interest support. And if you don't know what routable maps means, it means that you're not able to actually generate a course or a route directly on the watch by putting in a destination, similar to Google Maps on your phone. However, on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, you can import a route. That can be a GPX file that you can download from sources like Strava or even Garmin Connect. Then you can upload it to the watch and follow that course and get turn-by-turn directions. Jumping back to the Garmin Fenix 8 here, this has a huge advantage when it comes to maps, and it's that the maps are routable. The Garmin Fenix 8 comes with a full regional base map. Depending where you live, it'll be pre-installed, and then when you want to navigate to a destination, you can put that in directly on the watch and have the watch generate a course to get there. The Garmin Fenix 8 also has point of interest support. That means if you're searching for a coffee shop or a restaurant or a hotel or even the summit of a mountain or a campsite or something like that, it has all of that stored offline inside the watch, and you can search for it in real time. And the final thing I'll mention when it comes to mapping and navigation is course building. Within the Garmin Connect app on your phone, you can design a course. You can simply tap around on a map and design a course and then send it over to the watch directly from the app. That feature is currently not available within the Amazfit Zep app. You have to have a GPX file from another source. The next topic I'll discuss here is battery life between the Garmin Fenix 8 and the Amazfit T-Rex 3, because on paper, the T-Rex 3 has some absolutely wild claims. So the Amazfit T-Rex 3 claims it can run for 27 days in smartwatch mode with the always-on display turned off. The Garmin Fenix 8 here in this 47mm form factor advertises 16 days in smartwatch mode. On the Amazfit T-Rex 3, they do play a bit of a game when it comes to battery life, and I'll show you why. First of all, if we dive into the battery manager here, you can see I have 48% of battery life, and it hasn't been charged in 8 days, which is pretty solid. That doesn't stack up to that 27-day claim, and I'll explain why. If I scroll down, you'll see all these different toggles and settings for heart rate monitor, auto stress monitor, assisted sleep monitor, sleep breathing monitor, and the always on display. And depending which one of these settings you have turned on or off will change your battery life dramatically. But more importantly, the heart rate monitor setting is super interesting here. Because if I go into the heart rate app here and I scroll down to the settings, you're gonna notice something kind of interesting. And it's that the heart rate monitor only picks up a sample of your heart rate every 5 minutes. And if I dive into that setting, you can toggle it to other settings from 30 minutes or off all the way up to 1 minute for the fastest frequency. And interestingly, I've seen this trick before because it's something that Coros also does on their watches. They only sample your heart rate every 10 minutes out of the box, and that's how they get such incredible runtime on their watches when it comes to battery life. And we're seeing the same thing here on the T-Rex 3. In fact, if I click on that 1 minute interval setting, it gives me a warning telling me that it will hurt my battery life. It is vastly different to the Garmin Fenix 8 because this does not do that. This watch samples your heart rate every 1 second, 24 hours a day, and does not stop. This watch continually monitors your heart rate, and maybe that's why I'm getting better accuracy from body battery and all the wellness data compared to the T-Rex 3. But that's not the end of the story here, because there's also GPS on battery life when you're actually out on a run with these watches. And that's where the T-Rex 3 does have a slight edge. Because unlike smartwatch mode, when the T-Rex 3 is in an activity like a run or a bike ride, it does actively sample your heart rate from your wrist. It's sampling every 1 second, just like the Garmin Fenix 8. And even in the highest accuracy setting on the Amazfit T-Rex 3 here, you do get 42 hours in a GPS activity with heart rate sensing turned on, and that is really impressive. Moving right along, let's talk about third-party services on Garmin and Amazfit. That's another big difference, because on the Garmin platform, Garmin has been around forever. They're sort of the pioneer in the GPS watch space, and they connect to every third-party service. That's Training Peaks, Final Surge, Strava, you name it, there's probably a way to connect your Garmin account. Now on the Amazfit T-Rex 3, it does have third-party service support, but it is kind of limited. At the time of filming this video, it does support Apple Health, Google Health, it does support Strava, and surprisingly, it does support Training Peaks in the app as well. And the final topic I want to bring up here is something I read a lot in the comments of my past videos, and that is support in firmware updates down the road and how long these watches will last. Garmin has a pretty good track record for their watches. In fact, I have a Garmin Fenix 1, hang on. This watch here is from 2012. It's the first Garmin Fenix. It's the first one that ever came out. And guess what? This watch still works. I can still go for a run with it, and I can still sync my activity with Garmin Connect with this watch without an issue. Garmin will pretty much always keep your watch working with their service. Even if they don't add new features to it, it'll continue to work pretty much indefinitely. Another benefit to the Garmin platform is their support. If you do live here in the USA, Garmin is a USA-based company where you can call someone in Kansas, get on the phone with them, and they'll try to walk you through any issues you're having with your watch. Amazfit has gotten a lot better with that as well. In fact, they've recently updated the older Amazfit T-Rex 2 and T-Rex Ultra to include some of the new features we're seeing on the T-Rex 3 here, which is good to see. Amazfit is still kind of a new company, still kind of new to the game. They've been around for a while, so time will tell how long things will last. I'm not saying it's not going to last, but it is a little bit of a concern for me at least. And that brings us to the end of this video where I want to talk final thoughts and conclusions after going through all those different categories. And I didn't make this video to go and bash on the T-Rex 3. That wasn't my intentions here, because the T-Rex 3 in a lot of ways is really amazing. I mean, think about the price here, $279 versus $1,100. And it's kind of impressive that I'm making this video at all to compare these two, because they do have a lot of similarities, but they are different as well. So is the Amazfit T-Rex 3 a Garmin Fenix 8 killer? No. At the end of the day, it's not a Fenix 8 killer, but it is a really good, really capable watch for $279. The sacrifices you make compared to the Garmin Fenix 8 are things like the routable maps, the offline music support from Amazon Music or Spotify, the built-in flashlight, which is pretty handy on the Fenix 8, more in-depth activity profiles like golfing on the Fenix 8, the speaker and microphone on board the Fenix 8, which allows you to make and take phone calls, and ultimately just more useful health and wellness data compared to the Amazfit T-Rex 3. All I'm saying here is that there's still a difference between this $1,100 watch and this $279 watch. And I think we could all expect that. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did find it helpful, I would really appreciate it if you go down and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. And while you're down there, don't forget to drop into the comments down below and let me know what you think about these two watches. Is the Amazfit T-Rex 3 enough for you? Are you going to save some money and go with it? Or are you going to spend up for the Garmin Fenix 8 to have sort of the best of the best? And after you're done commenting, make sure to drop into the description down below where you will find links over to the Amazfit T-Rex 3 and the Garmin Fenix 8. Those links do help support this channel, but they cost nothing extra to you. And after you check out those links, also check out the links to my other social media platforms, my Instagram, my Threads, my Strava, all those things, as well as my merch store where you can pick up a sweet shirt like this. And we made it. That's the end of this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.